I'm Sarah Anderson, 62 years old. I live alone in an apartment in New York. My mom divorced right after I was born, and I was raised by her in a single-parent household. Fortunately, after the divorce, my dad provided enough support to cover my expenses through college. Later, I joined a fairly well-known company and got married through an introduction by my boss. Eventually, my son was born, and we enjoyed happy days, but my husband suddenly passed away from an illness shortly after our son started his jobs. My son's name is Matthew. As a child, he was a kind and considerate boy, but his personality began to change around the time he entered college. After my husband died, his selfishness worsened, and he started saying things like this.
I'm an adult now, so stop worrying about me.
I should probably feel proud of him for becoming so independent, but maybe I feel a little lonely because I'm getting old. He is now getting married to a woman named Harper, the daughter of a client CEO whom he met through work. Her family seems to be quite prestigious, and at first, they looked down on my son for being raised by a single mother, but her dad stepped in and said,
"It's old-fashioned to talk about family background nowadays. If the two of them are happy with each other, that's all that matters."
In the end, Matthew married into her family. The wedding took place at their family's home, and when I visited for the first time, I was amazed by how large and grand their house was. I decided to give my home to my son and moved into a new apartment I bought with my late husband's inheritance. It's still in New York, but I love the quiet suburban environment. My daughter-in-law still carries some of that old family pride. After my husband passed away, she seemed to look down on me for living in a small apartment in New York. It felt like she assumed I was just a poor person living off my pension.
Sarah, I don't mean to be rude, but may I speak freely?
Yes, what is it?
Aren't you struggling financially?
Thank you for your concern. I'm managing just fine.
Our family is from a well-known. My dad is the CEO of a famous furniture company. We're quite wealthy and have substantial assets. Are you aware of that?
She boasted about her family as if it was the most natural thing.
So, you don't expect to receive any financial support from us, do you?
What do you mean by that?
To be blunt, I don't want our money being used to support your lifestyle.
Does she really think I'm poor and plan to live off her family's money? Well, I've never thought about it, but…
Maybe not now, but it'll happen eventually, right?
What kind of upbringing did she have to say such things? Well, thank you for your concern, but there's really no need to worry.
Don't forget you said that.
With those words, she walked away. Her outrageous behavior made it clear just how awful her personality was. Then, one day, my son and his wife came to visit my house. Since it had been a while, I wanted to treat them well and prepared a lot of homemade food. My mom was from Texas, so I'm good at cooking mildly seasoned dishes. I made grilled fish and potato salad. But since Harper is from the Midwest, she seemed to think the food was too bland and didn't look impressed.
This food looks kind of poor. Don't you have any chicken?
Sorry, I grew up near the coast, so I'm better at cooking fish than meat dishes. I humbly apologized, but she cut me off coldly.
Sounds like you had a pretty poor upbringing.
Well, we weren't poor though. I managed to defend myself.
I'm not sure what you mean by poor, but we weren't poor.
Even my son, who was listening, surprisingly supported me for once.
but it looks so meager with just vegetables and fish. It's a poor meal.
Her condescension knew no bounds. This isn't a poor meal. These are beautiful meals. I couldn't take it anymore and snapped back. But then,
Mom, her family's meat dishes are amazing. The Midwest is famous for its branded beef, and I'm hooked on it.
for some reason, Matthew, who had just been defending me, suddenly switched sides to support his wife. Now that I think about it, her family is from a region famous for its premium beef.
Please try my local beef. You can easily cut it with a knife, and it melts in your mouth. Oh, I'm sorry. We always eat the premium stuff. It's quite expensive, so it's probably out of your reach, Sarah.
She covered her mouth with her hand and gave a laugh. I could only manage a forced smile. One day, when I had almost forgotten about all this, I was invited to visit her family's home. I was invited just at the end of summer.
There are fewer tourists now, and things have calmed down, so why not come for a visit?
This time, it was my son's idea. I didn't have any particular plans, and since I rarely had a chance to visit the Midwest, I decided to accept it. Although I was invited, I brought a gift from a well-established store in New York.
Oh, there's no need for that. We eat this all the time and are quite bored of it, but I'll take it since you went through the trouble.
That's the kind of thing she says. Her snide remarks made me angry, but this was my in-laws' home. Everyone here felt like an enemy to me. As usual, her family's house was magnificent. They renovated the garden and built a pond where exotic ornamental fish were swimming gracefully.
These fish are worth about $10,000 each. There aren't many of them, but we focused on quality over quantity. I gave them that advice.
She said it with such pride. I was once again reminded of her controlling nature. Matthew and Harper invited me to stay at a luxurious nearby spa hotel. The place was impressive, and I enjoyed their famous premium beef, which was indeed delicious. Had it not been for Harper's constant snide commentary, I would have enjoyed it even more. Then, when I went to Matthew's in-laws' house to say thank you and goodbye, we all sat down for tea. Thank you for everything. I appreciate the wonderful spa and the delicious food. Little did I know, my words of gratitude would lead to a family showdown.
Oh, it was nothing at all. There's no need to thank us.
Harper seemed ready for a fight. Matthew is fortunate to have married into such a good family, and as his mom, I'm very grateful. Thank you. I said something I didn't really mean.
Actually, I'm more concerned about you, Sarah. After seeing your home, I couldn't help but worry. You're living on your pension, aren't you?
Well, it's enough for me to live comfortably.
But won't it eventually run out, and you'll come asking my family for help? I'd prefer to avoid that.
I've never even considered such a thing. It was becoming a war of words.
Well, it's bound to happen sooner or later, right? That's why I want to settle this now.
She was getting to the point. Settle? What do you mean?
I'm not heartless. That's why we invited you this time, so you could have one last enjoyable time with Matthew. Did you enjoy yourself?
Yes, well, I did enjoy it.
I'm glad. Now, let this be the last time we have any contact.
What do you mean?
If you end up becoming a beggar, it would cause us great trouble. So I'd like you to become a stranger to us.
A beggar? A stranger? I repeated her words, unable to comprehend what she was saying.
Yes, I'm telling you, we should sever ties now. Do you understand?
Her condescending attitude made me furious, but I barely managed to contain it. Understood. If that's what you want, then let's do that. Even as I calmly agreed, she continued with her snide remarks.
I'm relieved. Don't worry, we've arranged for a train ticket back to New York, so you can head home comfortably. Well then, goodbye.
I'll just say thank you for this time, at least. Goodbye. Leaving that parting shot, I returned to New York. I was indeed angry about how my son and his wife treated me, but I didn't act on it. I quietly moved on with my life. To clear my mind, I took a trip to my beloved New Orleans. From that point on, I completely stopped sending money to Matthew. I used to give him part of the dividend from the stocks I inherited from my dad as an allowance, but since they insisted on severing ties, I had no choice but to stop. Matthew begged me.
Please continue in secret.
No, we're severed, so there will be no more support. I refused it. Apparently, my allowance to Matthew was a secret from Harper. She controlled their finances, and he had been using the money I gave him to buy anime merchandise, which was his hobby. When he got married, Harper threw away his entire treasured collection, and it seems he had started collecting again bit by bit. Then I heard that his father-in-law had collapsed. Fortunately, his life was saved, but due to a stroke, he could no longer work, and the family business and company presidency would be passed on to Matthew and Harper. Although my daughter-in-law's family is quite wealthy, their company management has been rather forceful, which has garnered them a lot of negative attention. With Matthew and Harper taking over, many of the business partners who were dissatisfied with the previous management began cutting ties, and the business started to decline. Since it was her father, under normal circumstances, I would have gone to visit, but as I had been disowned, I refrained. Harper is very much like her father in personality, so I imagine she would run the business the same way he did. However, in my personal opinion, she doesn't seem to have much business acumen. She is selfish and looks down on others, which made me concerned for the future. As expected, the company's sales began to drop, and a new venture that she initiated turned out to be a failure, adding to their financial burdens. Sales of their main product, high-end furniture, remained sluggish, and the company's overall financial outlook looked bleak. I was concerned, but I decided to wait and see how things played out. Then, a major overhaul took place at the company, with the entire board of directors being replaced. Under my son's leadership as the new CEO, they planned to downsize the current operations and venture into new sectors. I'm not sure of all the details, but it seems the decision was made at the insistence of Harper, who is the largest shareholder. Although Matthew holds the title of CEO, it appeared as though his input was ignored. It was so typical of her. But it turned out to be a huge failure. Sales of their core products plummeted, and the performance of the new ventures was far below expectations. As the company's performance deteriorated, the stock price dropped significantly, and more employees began leaving, casting doubt on the company's future. I had been keeping an eye on the stock price, which continued to hit new lows. Dividends disappeared, and financial analysts and brokerage firms predicted a grim future. Soon, the company might be delisted from the stock exchange. If that happens, they won't be able to trade shares in the market, making it extremely difficult to raise funds. The banks would likely be hesitant to lend money, so they'd be left with no option but to sell off assets. Harper's family owns a lot of forested land in the area, but since it's a rural location, the value is not very high. Still, in the end, they'll probably have no choice but to sell that off. Well, since I've been cut off from them, there's no point in me worrying about it. I continued to live modestly as always. For some reason, I received a few calls from Matthew and Harper, but I ignored them, as I had no need to talk to them. Then, while I was enjoying my annual autumn trip to New Orleans to admire the fall foliage, something happened. This year's truffles were smaller than usual, likely due to the weather, but they were exceptionally flavorful and delicious. The vibrant fall colors outside my window, combined with the rich taste, brought me a sense of peace. As I savored the autumn in New Orleans, appreciating it with both my eyes and taste buds, a staff member approached me with a message.
"There's a visitor here to see you."
Really? I had no appointments, and only a select few people even knew I was in New Orleans. Who is it?
"It's Harper. Harper Brown."
Harper? I paused for a moment, then immediately realized who it was. Well, I know her, but we're not on speaking terms. Please ask her to leave.
"Yes, of course."
The staff member left, but soon returned.
"She insists on seeing you. She's begging. What would you like to do?"
Well, if that's the case, show her to the guest room. I'll be there after I prepare myself. I returned to my room and changed into appropriate attire. I apologize for keeping you waiting. It's been a long time. As far as I understand, we are no longer on speaking terms. What brings you all the way here? I greeted her calmly.
It has been a long time. I've come to humbly apologize for all the disrespect I've shown you in the past. Thank you for allowing me this chance to speak.
Oh, this must be some misunderstanding. You see, meeting with you is nothing more than a whim of mine. Don't mistake this as forgiveness. It will only cause you more pain later.
No, I misspoke. I sincerely apologize.
Her face turned pale, likely from a mix of nervousness and my cold demeanor.
I heard this grand house belongs to you. Could you tell me how you came to acquire it?
She must have heard the truth about my background somewhere. It was clear as day that she came here out of desperation, hoping to get some help as her financial troubles mounted. I gave her a sly smile and shut her down. That's none of your concern. And then, after taking a deep breath, I decided to come out with it clearly. This is my dad's holiday home. I inherited it from him.
Your dad?
My dad's name was Michael Anderson. He's no longer with us. You haven't heard of him?
You mean the former president of Anderson Trading. So, you're the daughter of the previous president?
She was flustered as she learned this new fact. Let me explain it to her in more detail. That's right. I'm the daughter of his first wife, and I use my mom's surname. The current president is my half-brother. My mom has already passed away, and I distanced myself from the Anderson family. I'm not suited for business, so I left the management to my brother. I wanted to live quietly during my remaining years, so I received a portion of the company's shares and this house as a gift from my dad before his death.
Well, I see.
She seemed to understand now. Let me tell her about how I live now. I don't deal in stocks myself, so I just receive dividends twice a year. It's around $100,000, which is more than enough. I've never liked a flashy lifestyle. This house is managed by my brother. As you can see, I have staff here full-time, and I can use the place whenever I want.
Well,
She was almost speechless. Now then, what brings you here? Just to clarify, as far as I know, we are no longer in contact, correct?
Yes, that's true. But as you may be aware, our family business isn't doing well. I was wondering if you could perhaps offer some assistance. Could you possibly help us in some way?
She pleaded with me, wringing her hands. Oh, and how did that happen? I asked, pretending not to know.
Well, my dad fell ill, and Matthew took over as president, but he's inexperienced. I thought it would be better if a blood relative, took charge, so I've been helping him out.
So, Matthew is just a figurehead, and you're the one who holds the real power?
Yes, that's correct.
At this point, she must have realized there was no point in trying to make excuses. It seems her explanation was truthful. And what happened after that?
The changes I led in product strategy failed, and we've accumulated huge losses and debts. I've tried everything but.
So you tracked me down?
Yes, that's right.
I sighed. And now you want me to help?
Please, if you could.
Do you remember what you said to me? If I recall correctly, you said, in cutting ties with my poor mother-in-law to avoid the nuisance of her becoming a beggar. Now, how would you describe your current actions?
I'm begging for money.
In the eyes of society, that's called begging, isn't it?
Yes, you're absolutely right.
Isn't it? I smiled and declared, I refuse. You underestimated me. After looking down on me so much, you now come begging for help? That's not happening.
I'm so sorry. Please, I'm begging you.
She desperately pleaded with me again and again. I ignored her pitiful display and dismissed her. I am not the kind of person who gives alms to beggars. Please leave.
Please. The banks have stopped lending, and we have nowhere else to turn.
I'll say it once more. Please leave. I wish you the best of luck. With that, I asked the staff, please show the guest out and escort her to the door. 4 staff members dragged her out of the room because she didn't move. I returned to my room, once again gazing at the fiery autumn leaves, and softly whispered to myself, I only want to live in peace. Not long after, I heard that her company had gone bankrupt. To settle their debts, they had to sell all their land and homes, and now they're living in a small rented house, working multiple part-time jobs to make ends meet. As for me, I'm still living in my apartment in New York. When Matthew moved out after getting married, he bought me a cat, saying it would keep me company. My Maine Coon, David. His long fur requires a lot of care, but he loves being brushed and always stays calm. Watching his contented face while I brush him makes me feel good too. David, maybe we should go to New Orleans again. We always go in the fall, so maybe we should try going in the winter this time. You don't like the heat, so summer would be too tough for you, right? As I say this, he gently nibbles my hand. Hey! When I scold him, he licks the spot he bit, as if to apologize. You're just too cute, aren't you? I'm completely smitten with David. And so, I found myself back in New Orleans once again. Outside, the snow was falling silently. David was in my arms, watching the snow with me. The year's almost over. You were so small when you first came to me, small enough to fit in my hand, and now look how big you've gotten. When I noticed how quiet he was, I realized David had fallen asleep. They say sleeping helps you grow, but if you get any bigger, I won't be able to hold you anymore. I gently touched his nose and looked back outside. It was a peaceful, snowy night. I started to feel sleepy too. I wonder if the snow will paint a beautiful scene by morning? With that thought in mind, I climbed into bed. David snuggled in next to me. It looks like I'm going to have sweet dreams. I closed my eyes with that thought.